everyone, it's Mackenzie here from Max Animals, and today I'm going to be doing a reacting to my subscribers' unpopular hamster opinions. So let's get right into the video. Alright, so I have all of the opinions up here on my iPad, and so this one is from Paige, and it says, if you can't afford to take the pet to the vet, don't even buy it. The pet doesn't deserve that. And I agree with this wholeheartedly. I think this is a great statement because if you can't afford vet care for an animal, why would you even get the animal? Because that animal deserves to have health care. It's like you wouldn't have a kid if you knew that you couldn't afford medicine for it when it got sick. It's the exact same thing with an animal, and yes, hamsters do need vet care. It's a very common myth that small animals don't need to go to the vet, but they do. So you'll need to find an exotic vet in your area that will treat hamsters. So the next opinion is from Paige and Pets, and it says bin cages aren't suitable, and I 100% agree with this as well. Now this might be a shock to some people because bin cages have been widely regarded in the hamster community as good or like a good beginner option for a long time now, but I just don't think that they provide an adequate amount of space because even the biggest bins don't meet the minimum somehow, whether they taper on the sides or whether the height isn't tall enough. Not to mention that plastic traps in heat very easily, so for the same reason that you don't want to use plastic hides during the summer, you wouldn't want to use a bin cage during the summer. Also, not to mention, plastic is easy for a hamster to chew out of, and hamsters are known escape artists. And also, if ingested, plastic is very toxic, so if they're chewing to try to escape the cage and they're ingesting that plastic, that can be very detrimental to their health and can cause intestinal blockages, which will just result in a very expensive vet bill that would cost more than it would have costed you to just get a proper cage in the first place. So the next opinion is from M, and it says, the minimum for a female Syrian is the same as any other hamster. Just because she's a female Syrian doesn't mean she deserves any better than any other hamster. If she's showing stress signs, you need to upgrade, as goes for any other hamster. So I'd say I'm kind of 50-50 on this opinion because if you're very familiar with the hamster community, female Syrians are known as being very hard to please, and they need more enrichment and a bigger cage than most of their hamsters. So I think that if you're getting a female Syrian, you should have a cage that's slightly above the minimum, just because you know that there's like a 99% chance that they're not going to be happy in a cage that's like the bare minimum size. So I'd get a bigger cage, and then you'll still want to be able to upgrade, but it's better if you just get a slightly bigger cage. That way you won't have to be upgrading a bajillion times because hamster cages are expensive. So that's just my take on that opinion. If you have a female Syrian hamster and she's happy in a bare minimum size cage, let me know in the comments because I feel like that's a very rare occurrence with female Syrians. Bin cages aren't suitable in any situation. Like I've already discussed, I 100% agree with that one. Willow the Syrian hamster says, if you can't afford the vet, you can't afford the pet. It's very similar to the other one that I answered, and I totally agree with that. Pets are expensive, and if you can't afford vet bills, then you probably can't afford proper care either, which means that you just shouldn't own that animal. Another one from Sophia, and she says, dwarves and Syrians have the same size minimum. Their size doesn't matter, and I 100% agree with this. Although I do think Syrians, just because of their size and their temperaments, they probably will need a little bit bigger than a dwarf, but dwarves for sure need a minimum of 775 square inches of floor space, which is a 100 by 50 centimeter cage. This one's from Tara's Pets, and she says, not every hamster needs playpen time. I wholeheartedly agree with this. I think Archer is a great example of this. I basically only put him in the playpen when he's getting like really restless or when I'm cleaning his cage. And this is just because he doesn't enjoy the playpen. He gets stressed, he starts biting at the walls, climbing at the walls. He doesn't like it in there. He would much prefer to just be in his cage with a boredom breaker or something. So yes, that's very much a situation that depends on the individual hamster because hamsters will all have different personalities. So yeah. This one's from Josie, and she says, Victoria Rachel promotes under the minimum care and half the time doesn't provide a well-enriched enclosure. This one is the most controversial opinion in here, like by far, and I've got to say, I think I'm 50-50 on this one as well. I agree, but to like a certain extent, because her hamsters are happy as far as I'm concerned. At least, obviously, we don't get to see everything that goes on because she's just a content creator. She only posts like highlight reels of basically of her animals because that's what everyone does. So I'd say as far as promoting care goes, I think she could be a lot more like stricter when it comes to minimums and like what a hamster should have. She's very like loose nowadays when it comes to size. Like she doesn't really explicitly say what size a hamster should have, which based on scientific evidence is 100 by 50 centimeters. And when it comes to enrichment in her enclosures, especially for her Syrian hamsters, I do think she could do better. It's not horrible. I would say she has proper care, but I wouldn't say her enclosures are like perfect. Obviously, no one is perfect. We can always improve our care somehow, but I think for as big as a platform as she has, she could be doing more to promote better hamster care. Another one from Josie, and it says the bare ethical minimum for Syrians, especially females, should be 1,000 plus square inches. And I do agree with this. I honestly don't feel like 775 square inches is a great size for all hamsters. Like I have the paw hut enclosure, which is about 1,015 or 1,050, I can't remember exactly, square inches. It's about 115 by 60 centimeters, so it's above the minimum, and I haven't had a hamster be unhappy in that cage, and so I probably wouldn't use a cage smaller than that, especially not for a Syrian. But yeah, I think for Syrians, over 1,000 square inches is perfect, and almost every hamster will be happy in at least 1,000 square inches. So this one's from the Squeaky Pigs, and they say the Detolf is only suitable for dwarfs, and I agree with this as well. So if you don't know what the Detolf is, it's a hamster cage made from an IKEA shelf, and it's very narrow, like it's long, but it's skinny. And so I've heard from a lot of people that their Syrians get stressed in like skinny spaces and that they prefer wider spaces. So I definitely agree with this. I think that the Detolf should only be used for dwarfs unless you're connecting two Detolfs together and making a double Detolf, which would increase the width. So this one's from half of Europe, and they say, I have a weird fear of wood bedding. I don't blame you for this. There's a lot of different kinds of wood bedding, and most of them are unsafe for hamsters, actually. Aspen and spruce are safe. I can't think of other safe ones off the top of my head. Gypsy is a safe brand. So there's not that many safe options, especially that are sold in pet stores for hamsters. So yeah, that's a totally valid fear to have. Personally, I like to use aspen bedding just because it holds burrows up really well in my experience, and it's a little bit cheaper. So yeah, I don't blame you for that. You don't have to use wood bedding. Paper-based bedding is a totally fine option as well. This one's from Amy, and she says, if you haven't got a suitable vet for your hamsters in your location, you shouldn't get one. And this is similar to a couple others that have been said before, and I do agree with this. This is more based on like the vet itself though, because of being able to take the hamster to the vet money-wise is one thing, but then actually having an exotic vet in your area is another thing, because a lot of places won't have an exotic vet. Because believe it or not, hamsters are considered exotic pets. Basically anything that's not a cat or a dog is exotic. So yeah, exotic vets can be hard to find. I'm lucky that the vet we take my dog to is an exotic vet. So if I were to ever have any hamster problems, I could take my hamsters there. But yeah, exotic vets can be difficult to find. And I do think that if you don't have an exotic vet, at least within like 30 minutes of your house, because a lot of times small towns don't have that many options. So yes, I totally agree with that. This one's from Nilla Miller, and they say, hamsters are not nocturnal, they're crepuscular. So I'm just going to disagree with this one on a personal level, because my hamster Archer, he's not crepuscular whatsoever. I would never label him as crepuscular. He is strictly nocturnal to me. He wakes up around 10 p.m. and is back asleep by 6 a.m. So that's very much like exact definition of nocturnal. He's awake all throughout those hours. So yeah, but I do think some hamsters, like I said, hamsters have different personalities, so some of them might be more crepuscular than nocturnal. But I think as a general statement, I think hamsters would be classed as nocturnal, just because I feel like they're awake for more hours in the nighttime than they are like in the morning or in the evenings. Yeah, I rarely ever had instances where my hamsters would wake up like earlier than 10 p.m. or would it be awake later than like 8 a.m.? So yeah. This one's from Millie the Hamster, and they say kids should be able to have a hamster if they give it the proper right care/needs. And I do agree with this, but I feel like at a certain age, like, it's the parent's pet, not the kid's pet. Like, if your kid is under like the age of like 12, they're not going to be able to fully care for an animal by themselves. It's going to be the hamster that's cleaning the cage and changing the water and doing the food and everything. But I think if they're like 12 or older and they have shown that they're responsible enough, they could have a hamster if they care for it properly. Yeah, this one is kind of controversial because a lot of people are like, hamsters aren't kids' pets, but they can be if that kid is dedicated enough. I got my first hamster when I was, I think, around 12, and he had, well, it wasn't proper care, but it was what I had researched and what was like proper care at the time, and I did improve my care over time and provide him with better care. But yeah, I don't think that children should be underestimated when they're older and have done lots of research. Another one from half of Europe, and they say, Carefresh is my favorite bedding. And I don't know, I don't really have any like grudge against Carefresh. I don't think I use paper bedding enough to speak on which brand is the best, but just from like general statements from what people have said, Carefresh usually isn't the best at holding burrows compared to other brands like KT Clean and Cozy. But I've used Carefresh a little bit and I never had any like super bad issues with it. I feel like when you're mixing it in with hay, like orchard grass hay or something, it should be able to hold burrows up pretty stable, nice and stable for your hamster. So yeah, I don't have anything against Carefresh. This one is from The Crew and Their Keeper, aka Hannah's Hamsters, and she says 100 by 50 centimeters is the minimum, and I 1000% agree with this. 100 by 50 centimeters has been proven in studies to be the size that hamsters show little to no stress signs in, and I feel like it's not really that big of a cage. Like, it's not unattainable in the slightest. There's lots of commercial brands that sell cages that big, like Night Angel, Bucket State, there's Paw Hut cages that meet that, and I think it's a perfect size for hamsters. It's like a baseline, you know? It's like you can provide this to your hamster, they might need more, or they might be happy in that, but if they're happy in that, you shouldn't go any lower because then they might not be happy in that, you know? And looks like that was the last of the unpopular opinions. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want a part 2 to this because this was very fun to make. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you want the chances to be in more videos just like this one. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Happy New Year. Bye!